It's the 2024 Holiday Gift Bowl at the Johnson's house. They're unwrapping it, and wow, Tommy John!
Tommy John pajamas! These could go on right now! Yes! Peter, with Tommy John, you are the GOAT, greatest gifter of all time. What were you thinking?
Owe it all to Tommy John. With their best pair you'll ever wear or it's free guarantee, they're the real MVP.
Shop Tommy John Cyber Monday sale now. Save 40% site-wide at TommyJohn.com/Spotify. See site for details.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a one-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
You want to see a guillotine in Piccadilly? No! You want to call that raggedy arse Napoleon your king? No! You want your children to sing the Marseillaise? No! Mr. Mort, Mr. Pulley, starboard battery!
Hello and welcome to Unequal Sequel. My name is Dave and I'm one of the two hosts of this toothless podcast.
And my name is Rich and I'm the other host of this toothless podcast. Think of me as Slimer to Dave's Ray. He's obsessed with the occult and I'm a green blob that eats everything.
Yeah, that does happen. The premise of Unequal Sequel is very simple. We ask our guests their best ever sequel, worst ever sequel, and finally their dream sequel.
And of course, sometimes we drift off and talk about other things, sometimes movies, sometimes life in general.
And sometimes we do drop big fat spoilers to movies you may not have seen. And if that happens, just pause or skip forward, go and reorganise your spice rack. The paprika should never be near the rosemary, okay? Because on today's episode, we're joined by Sean Wilson.
Sean is a brilliant film journalist. He's also massively into soundtracks, which is very cool. He writes for Film Score Monthly, Cineworld, Den of Geek, and Little White Lies, all those kind of good stuff. And you might also know him from the Frame to Frame podcast, which is a brilliant podcast. Go and check it out.
We're very excited to sit down with Sean and chat all things sequels with him.
These are Sean Wilson's Unequal Sequels. Enjoy!
Can you remember the first sequel you got excited about when you were young?
Oh, no, that's good. That's a really, really good question. I'm just trying to, so I'm kind of going on in like a 90s retrace. So I'm trying to think just briefly, what did I see in the cinema? I mean, I'll probably say it might be quite relatively late on, beyond the 90s, like Toy Story 2 maybe.
No, that's a good one. So how old were you when you saw Toy Story 2 then?
Well, I mean, I just to trace it back. So I went to see the first Toy Story on my 9th birthday, which would have been, I think it was sort of March, April 1996 that it came out in the UK. And unsurprisingly, given how much of a mind-blowing experience that was, the sequel, the prospect of a sequel just kind of was elevated in my mind. So I would have been 12, 13, I think, when the sequel came out. I think that was 2000 in this country. And just fascinating to think they were going to put it straight out on video, weren't they? They didn't even have the confidence to, but they later had the confidence to put it out in theatrical. That wasn't the original idea, which I find interesting.
It's all a bit mad because they nearly deleted it at one point as well. There's that famous story. Yeah, nearly. Did you know about Toy Story 2? Someone deleted it by mistake, and then luckily someone who was on maternity leave had a copy on their hard drive at home.
I do remember that, yeah.
Thank God for maternity leave, right?
Yeah.
If maternity leave has done anything, it's to redeem Pixar.
I do remember seeing that first one as well, Toy Story, when I was like 9, 10, probably the same age as you, and just being blown away by animation. I mean, I loved animation at that point because of Lion King and Aladdin and whatever, but Toy Story felt so new and so fresh and so different. I was like, I cannot believe how real the boy looked, Sid. So when the second one came out, I was very similar, and it was incredible, wasn't it? What did you like so much about it?
To be reunited with those characters, because I really remember very vividly. I mean, when you're younger, obviously you don't pick up on the resonance of it, the fact that it's about the fear of being abandoned and it's about obsolescence. You don't think about that when you're young. You're just absolutely bowled over by the fact that someone's crawled inside your imagination and made a film about toys coming to life. It's like the ideal universal scenarios. And I remember coming out of the first one after that birthday party that I'd had, and we were all swapping like who was our favourite character. Was it Rex? Was it Woody? Was it Potato Head? And I think just the characters, the simplicity and the elemental nature of the characters went in such an extent I just couldn't wait to be reunited with all of them again in the second one. And what they did with it in the second one, the idea that Woody, so obviously Tom Hanks is on the verge of giving in, and Buzz is the one that has to then step up and remind him of like, this, remember your status as Andy's buddy. You're not just a plaything. You're Andy's friend, and Buzz stepping up to do that. And then the whole thing with Zurg, and I remember the whole Barbie doll sequence in the department store. I remember just absolutely wetting myself at that. That was fantastic. It was kind of reminded me of what they'd done, well, sort of what they'd done with Small Soldiers. That was a bit darker with all the Gwendy dolls, with the Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. Yeah, it's good memories. Good memories of all that, watching those.
I forgot how good Small Soldiers is.
Yeah.
It's not a sequel, we shouldn't really talk about it, but why has there never been a sequel to Small Soldiers, even at that point?
Yeah, can I change my choice? No, I didn't.
Just incredible. So when you were growing up, were you really into films then? Where did that come from?
Yeah, it's funny because it's something that I've thought about a lot, and I think a lot of it goes back to a stray watch of Ghostbusters on TV when I was about like 4.
Wow.
And I think so. It must have gone in by osmosis because I just remember doodling things from Ghostbusters from quite a young age. I think my mum was quite perturbed by it. She was like, "What are you doing that for?" And I just kept doing it, like Slimer and the characters. And I remember hounding my mum to go and buy the toy of the plastic toy of the firehouse, the New York firehouse, and
yes.
she managed to track it down through the classifieds and buy one, and the Ecto 1 car as well. So I had all that stuff. So Ghostbusters was really formative for me, and I think that's what cemented a love of cinema. I mean, there are several others. I mean, I remember catching Raiders of the Lost Ark on the BBC. I mean, I think it was in quite an edited version because I remember the version I watched on DVD. I was like, okay, there's a lot more stuff in here that I don't remember happening in that original TV. And this was when the BBC routinely butchered quite a lot of films for like family viewing back in the late 80s, early 90s. But I remember really vividly the scene when Harrison Ford as Indy, when he's in the Cairo marketplace and he runs into that extreme close-up before Spielberg pulls the camera out and you see all the baskets. Yeah. They use that as the ident to build anticipation back in the day when they used to do that before the film actually came on. And that just got my attention straight away. I was like, I think I already vaguely knew who Harrison Ford was, only tangentially, but that, and then my love of Indiana Jones was born, and that cemented further my love of cinema. You could throw in like Never Ending Story, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, all those. Yeah. I mean, I'm a child. I was born in '87, so I was really getting to grips with these films probably from the early to mid 90s when they were kind of being traced down through repeats on telly, or maybe when they were on VHS. But I consider myself quite fortunate to have been born in that period. It was really a high period for fantasy and family comedies and family adventures, and I think that's where, it's a rambling answer, but I think broadly that's where it all comes from.
And did you go to the cinema a lot, or was it a VHS like video store?
Oh, it was both. Yeah, cool. It was both. I mean, it's. I think it's quite sad now, isn't it, that the whole VHS store thing seems to be a thing of the past now. But I remember that being just as important as the cinema. If you hadn't seen something in the cinema, you had to wait 8 to 12 months before it actually cycled down onto VHS, and that was good because it kind of, by making you wait, you appreciated the opportunity of watching it even more at home. I think it made you value it a lot more. But yeah, cinema was always a really big deal. I think the first film I saw in the cinema was probably Beauty and the Beast. I really vividly remember seeing Aladdin in the cinema. So I was a Disney kid. I mean, I was kind of born in just before the Disney Renaissance period. I remember The Lion King being absolutely huge. I'd never seen anything like that before. And I think that was the most emotional film I'd probably seen up to that point. I didn't know that a family film could hit you quite that hard. And you look back in it now, it's properly serious. It's properly like heavy stuff that it presents you with in The Lion King. But, a lot of Pocahontas, Hunchback of Notre Dame, I remember seeing those in the cinema. And then, of course, you get a bit older and then your taste starts to change and you start to branch out. So I remember things like Men in Black, how big that was when that came out.
Yeah.
The Bond films, The World Is Not Enough was the first Bond film I saw in the cinema. Yeah, I love talking about this. It's a nice trip down memory lane, actually. Yeah.
It is weird trying to describe what we had to do, because I'm about 2 years older than you, and Rich is a bit older than me. But that whole Blockbuster or your local video store experience, or just picking films with your mum and dad, and picking a film and then finding out they didn't have it, was all one of the...
Who got it before me?
Why have the case out?
Yeah.
I remember that.
Or just picking a film that you had no idea what it was. You just kind of
front
like
cover.
the picture on the front.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the heyday of artwork. I think what that did was with the VHS, what were then VHS cases facing out at you, it really instilled a love of movie artwork and how that can really arrest you, like you say, Rich, when you don't know what the film is, but you kind of get a vague impression of what it is just by looking at what's on the cover, even if you know that, right, that's really illicit, that was rated in 18, whatever, right, I'm obviously not allowed to watch that, but it all the more reason why it kind of grabs your attention. I remember... It was horror VHS covers in our local video store down in Torquay. It was always horrors and thrillers that always used to, I think that might have been where my love of like horror and dark fantasy and thrillers came in, because I remember being really creeped out by the VHS cover for Cape Fear, the Martin Scorsese remake. With Robert De Niro's eyes with like the thundery backdrop. I remember looking at that thinking, okay, I'm kind of intrigued, but I don't want to watch that because that looks really scary. There were others. I remember the cover for Wes Craven's, I think the People Under the Stairs with the skull coming out of the cloud as well. That one lingers in the memory. There was a standee of Tim Curry as Pennywise in It that was right next to the door, which gave me nightmares for about 4 years. I had nightmares about clowns for about 4 years after that.
Same as Dave. You're not a clown guy, are you, buddy?
Yeah. It's just,
clowns and puppets, not my thing.
Yeah. It's just, isn't it funny how it's like it's shared experiences, isn't it? Particularly with fear. There's a lot of like shared things, but what a phenomenal performance. I didn't even need to see the film. I just needed to see the standee of Tim Curry, and that haunted me for years.
I wasn't man enough to watch that until I was at university. I was about 20.
I still haven't watched it. I've still never seen it.
Yeah, it's
mad. The end of it is mad.
It is. It's kind of, it follows the unfortunate trajectory of the book, which is kind of like the kids sections are great and the adult sections,
I would say the updated versions are also very much like that. Like One is scary because kids are in peril, and then It Part 2 wasn't as scary because it's adults in peril, and you don't give a shit about adults, really.
It's kind of insurmountable. It's baked into the story. It's a real shame. That is, I think. Yeah.
They tried to do the cutbacks, but honestly, it was so long. But that original, like you said, that Tim Curry version, because that's originally it was a TV movie, wasn't it? So it's they put like two films and they squash them together and make it like a 4-hour film or whatever it was. Felt like 4 hours anyway.
Yeah.
Well, it's amazing to just hear about you talk about films and all that when you're growing up and stuff. Sean, what is your best ever sequel?
It's a predictable answer, and it's not at all tied into the fact that one of the actors is peddling his autobiography at the moment, but it's The Godfather Part 2.
Right.
Not picked as much as you might think. Despite widely being renowned as the best sequel ever made, I think you're the only the second person to ever pick it in like 7 seasons. So, yeah.
Good grief. I'm genuinely surprised at that. I thought that was going to be my most predictable choice out of the ones that I've selected.
Yeah. When did you see that?
It was, the thing is, it's again, a lot of it is tied into not necessarily childhood memories of watching these films, because obviously it wouldn't have been appropriate, but my dad loved the Godfather films, and I always remember...
There we go.
Yeah, it's he had the VHSs of the Godfather, and even though, I wouldn't have been interested in them anyway, because I just look at the cover and I think, okay, it just looks like it's about a fusty old man, why would I watch that? But it looked really, they looked really boring. Right. Yeah, I was quite intuitive at that age, clearly. But I always remember, again, my dad owning those VHSs, and I became aware of them probably at too young an age, really, despite having not watched them. But it was the symbol of like the hand with the marionette strings, above the title. That was a very, very good, like, simple little image. And then, one of the VHSs, it might have been the back of the third one, had a shot of Al Pacino as Michael Corleone with the glasses on. So it's funny how these images again sink in. But in terms of actually watching them, I wouldn't have thought it was until I was a teenager, probably about like 17, 18. I think that's probably a fairly standard formative period for watching these kind of films. I remember at that point, that was when I was getting into like Scorsese and Tarantino and all the classics. I think my dad was quite pleased when I first watched it. He was like, good, I can finally talk about it now because you've actually seen it. Yeah.
For so long, like my dad, when he suggests films when I was young, I was kind of rebel against it. So I can see where you're coming from there, yeah.
It's, my dad tried, I do remember him showing me the spaghetti westerns, and I do remember getting quite restless, but again, I do remember them sinking in, like imagery and landscape and things. I remember him... It's funny what I remember him watching. I remember him watching Platoon. I remember him watching Blade Runner. And obviously I was too young to watch all of these. But a lot of these movies he considered to be very important. When one catches up with them, like for The Godfather, for example, you think, oh, okay, now I know what I've been missing all this time.
Yeah.
There was I bought, when I was old enough to do so, there was this would have been in the early 2000s. They released all the Godfather films on the chunky like DVD collection. That must have been when I watched all of them like pretty much in one go. I would have thought. The Godfather I really liked as a establishing the landscape, but The Godfather 2 absolutely blew my mind. I was like, wow, it's like 4 hours. It feels like it flies by in 2 hours. It's so gripping and so beautifully handled. And it doesn't make the mistake of just repeating what's in the first one. It embellishes it, it builds on it. It teaches you things about the characters that you didn't know in the first, which I think is what any great sequel should do that. And Francis Ford Coppola did such a masterful job of that. And Al Pacino, just this man shrinking inside himself and losing his soul. It's chilling. To say it's chilling is an understatement.
Yeah. But I kind of came... Well, Godfathers are weird films. The way you come about Godfather is either, like us, you become film fans and you feel like you have to watch them because everyone keeps telling you to watch them, or your parents try and make you watch them, or you weirdly stumble across them at late night on Channel 4 or whatever. And stupidly with films like this, they always started at like 12 o'clock at night, and the next thing you know, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And you're still going.
Or like me, you watched it for a podcast.
Yes. So Rich is really new to the Godfather series.
Well, I watched The Godfather at university in our first year of uni.
And then you thought that's enough.
And I didn't watch part 2 until we started doing this podcast.
Oh, blimey, okay.
Yeah. So
when did you guys start doing this?
3 years ago, I think we've done it now.
Oh, great.
Yeah, 3.5 years ago.
So I watched it, I think I watched it for Petros. Was it Petros's one?
Yes.
So that's series 4. So we're like, probably about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I watched Godfather Part 2 for the first time.
I think people are a little bit scared of, maybe haven't picking it because I've never seen it, because it is long. It is you have to commit. It's not like I can go, hey, to my missus, do you want to watch Godfather 2 tonight? And she's like, oh, sure. How long is it? But like 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
3.5 hours.
Is it a mini series? No, it's a film. It's one film. Yeah.
It's a bit mad. Anyway, I came to it very much like you, and I think it's a brilliant, brilliant sequel, especially just the back and forth between two of probably the greatest actors. We're so lucky to have in the same film, and I love it that, wasn't it in the first one, they didn't even want Pacino to be in it? Yeah,
this is what he's been saying in it. There was a suggestion that Al Pacino has himself said he might have been replaced by Robert De Niro, but Paramount really weren't happy with Al Pacino at all. You kind of think, that's crazy.
It's just
absolutely insane.
The character development from point A in the first film to the end of the second film, I try not to. The third one, we'll get to the third one actually.
Yeah.
Is incredible. Like you said, there's a man who's lost his soul and kind of lost his way, but why do you love it so much?
Well, it's exactly what you say there. It's Shakespearean. It's probably as close as we'll come to a Shakespearean tragedy on film, barring actual adaptations of Shakespeare. But you look at something like, it's the equivalent of like Macbeth or Othello or this guy. When you trace it back to the first one and you see him with Kay, with Diane Keaton's character, and he's an relatively innocent young guy. His family have got mob connections, but he's come back from the war and he's got he's got a new girlfriend later to become his wife. And then when you trace it from that point specifically through the events of the first one, when he commits the first hits, out of revenge for them attempting to kill Vito, Marlon Brando, his father, you really do get the fall in the first film, and it doesn't feel rushed. It's paced very well in the first film, but it deepens so much in the second film because, I mean, I'm probably right in saying Al Pacino probably says a lot less in the second film, despite the fact that it's longer. It's so much about that almost calcified look, that petrified look that Al Pacino has. Yeah. It's because Pacino has become probably, I don't know, post Scarface, Pacino became sort of famous for being quite shouty and quite horsey. It's quite, doing the hoo-ah, like that, hoo-ah. But you go back and watch him in The Godfather 2 and you realise what capacity he had for subtlety, particularly when playing an increasingly evil and ruthless man. I think we can call him evil, can't we? He's a man.
He kills his brother.
Yeah, and that's just one of the incidents. That's just one of the incidents that sends him downhill. And and it's just the idea of he's not big in physical stature, but it's just in terms of the presence that he brings into the room. He almost like chills the room, doesn't he? Every single time he walks in, like the temperature seems to go down by a few degrees, and the way Pacino conveys that. But it's not solely Pacino's film. The cast is impeccable as it was in the first film. Every single person is brilliant. Diane Keaton, John Cazale, Lee Strasberg. But what I really love about this sequel is it does the flashback, flash forward thing across the two different timelines. And I've seen that done in a lot of movies where it just feels quite redundant. It feels like you're kind of just repeating things. In this, you never feel like you're repeating something. Like past and present are so beautifully interwoven with each other. And you really do understand how the past has impacting on the present, how everything that's happened before has led directly to this moment and is actively shaping. I just think that's beautifully done. Again, it is Shakespearean. It's literary. It's properly literary. It's beautifully written. And the flashback scenes with Robert De Niro as young Vito, who, in the greatest of ironies, he starts off in New York as being quite idealistic. I can make a name for myself. And then you contrast that with his son decades later, who's gone in the opposite direction. Again, you get these dichotomies that just play out in front of you that aren't laboured. It's fascinating to watch, to think that that's where the father began and this is where the son's ended up, in this completely horrible, isolated. I mean, he's got power, but he's got no one.
Yeah, and I think that helps you understand, right? Because Vito, you see, where Vito was in the last movie, and where Michael was in the last movie. So that flashback to then show you that Vito was actually quite like Michael. So now you understand Michael's journey a lot more because actually, you understand Vito's journey and the father and the son kind of replaying each other's kind of stories, really.
It's quite sad when each time you watch it back, just how tragic that story is from the point A to the point B, and what he goes through. And like you were saying, those flashbacks are so well balanced and paced. They're given room to breathe, unlike other films that have tried to do the Godfather Part 2. They kind of rush either one or two of the others. It's a beautifully timed and played movie. I think it's great. I love it. And every time someone picks it, I think, why do people not pick this more often? And I just want to know what's the way I'm trying to get at this? What would put people off watching? Because it is a hard sell sometimes. If you're not a cinephile like us, how would you it's really fucking good, you should watch it. And then how would you do that? How would you sell it to just the average person?
Yeah, how
to my wife in particular, I need to.
So if I put myself in the mindset of upselling this to your wife, I'm just thinking, well, yeah, it is a tough. I mean, one cannot judge it from the standards of movies nowadays, because movies nowadays have got a very particular aesthetic, just as this had a particular aesthetic back in 1974, because this came out at the peak of obviously the new Hollywood wave, where it was like acting driven, dialogue driven, script driven. I'm not saying films aren't like that now, but this was a particularly rich period in Hollywood history, and this film is very emblematic of that. So what I would say is that if you're just sick and tired of movies that are flippant and facile and full of explosions and quips, and if you like a good book, if you like sinking into a good book, this is like the movie equivalent, I would say, of that.
That's nice. I'm going to use that.
It's patented. No, it's that's how I would say. It's like a great work from, like, I don't know, Dostoevsky or someone. Like, you just get lost in the folds of it, and you notice these ironies and these subtleties the more you watch it. And one of the other reasons why I love it so much is because it's the story of America. It's how America was born, or how modern America was born. And I love American history. I find it very, very fascinating in all its tribulations and violence and bloodshed, and the fact that it's an immigrant story of America. And it's like, how did America end up at this point as this like multicultural melting pot, and the time that the Cosa Nostra first came over and first basically infiltrated American society. I think it just articulates all that so well in the way that maybe a good book would have done the same thing. I mean, obviously, actually, I suppose we ought to credit Mario Puzo, don't we, who wrote the book upon which it's based. But, yeah, I haven't read the book, so I've only watched the film. Yeah.
I've been told the first film is more like the book, and then he expanded bits and bobs. How often do you rewatch it? How much do you come back to it?
Not that often. Probably, like, I don't know, once every 5 or 10 years, because it is long and it is demanding. I mean, somewhat ironically, I think it moves faster than the first film. I think it's better paced than the first film, despite the fact that it is longer. There are more. I just find the drama with the characters is inherently, there's a lot more at stake in this one, which I think kind of propels you through it a lot more. And then the flashbacks obviously help that with Robert De Niro as well. It puts everything in context with what's happening with Michael, with Al Pacino, and then you just know it's all going to go wrong in that the domestic scene between him and Kay. Like, you won't take my children. It's like, God, it's like, it's like you're not actually watching people acting. Like, it's extraordinary.
It's extraordinary. Which bit do you prefer? Do you prefer the old stuff, De Niro stuff, or the Pacino stuff?
Oh, I think I like the Pacino stuff. I think there's just something horribly gripping about watching a guy not sell himself out, but transform into something like that. It is almost like a monster movie, really.
It really is, yeah.
It's just, it's unbelievable, particularly, like I said, when you consider where he started in the first film. And I mean, the third film is flawed, but I think the third film ends beautifully. The third film ends exactly the way it nails the landing. I think the third movie doesn't nail an awful lot else, but at the end of the third film, after the daughter of the Sofia Coppola has been shot, and you get the silent scream, and it does the reverse montage, taking you all the way back to where Michael started, and it just underlines that tragedy of his character beautifully. And then the irony being that, his father died surrounded by people, and he dies alone on a chair, and it's just horribly tragic. I think the third film got that right. I think it's beautifully done.
Yeah, the third film, Rich hasn't seen it yet, but one day he will get.
Sorry.
No, you're right. It's from
He's had his chance.
Come on,
he's had his chance.
I've got to accept that things get spoiled. It's no problem, honestly.
Because what is so good about those first two films is the aesthetics, the way it looks. The third film doesn't seem to have that. Like, it doesn't. It looks like it's filmed in the 90s, which it was. So I can't have. But I just don't know it's just not good, is it?
I don't know what it is about I think the third one does have its merits. I think something happened with Coppola's directing of the actors. Like, the acting is a lot broader in the third one. It's like Coppola was obviously a very different filmmaker in 1990 compared to 1974. I mean, in between he'd made Apocalypse Now and gone through all that. Yeah, so maybe that influenced it. Like, I think Coppola had been compelled to go more commercial through the 80s. And I think The Godfather 3 feels like a more commercial movie than the other ones, for better or for worse. It doesn't have the artistry. Sophia Coppola, however you say her name, was obviously derided for her performance. It was meant to be Winona Ryder, and then she ended up doing it.
She was dropped in very late, wasn't she? I don't think she wanted to do it. There's every word she says, she's like, "My dad's making me be here," kind of vibe.
Yeah, and it's not the worst performance of all time. I think people might have blown that out of proportion a little bit, and it was almost like internet hysteria before people relied on the internet, really. But there are good set pieces in the third one. The ending is beautiful. The ending lands it. I think Al Pacino is obviously in a very, very different place as an actor in the third one compared to where he was in the first two. First I thought I was out, then they pulled me back in. Like that kind of thing. It's kind of like it's a lot broader. I'll go back to that word again, but yeah, it's got its merits, I think.
Yeah, would you recommend Rich to watch it?
I've done a thing I always do on my podcast, Frame to Frame now, which is I give away things completely unwittingly. My co-host Andy always gets on at me about that because I've done it to him a lot. So I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. I know, it's just fine. To watch the end now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, you could probably go from the second Godfather to just watching the end of the third one. I mean, I think you get the flow pretty effectively. Yeah, I reckon.
Or just not watch the third one. There's two perfectly brilliant films.
That's what I've done.
Yeah.
Until someone picks it for their podcast.
That's what we wait for.
Yeah.
What is your best part of Godfather Part 2?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Fredo's death is beautifully done. It's almost done as a requiem, isn't it? Michael but watching outside the frozen lake while Fredo is out on the boat. Oh, it's just it's the classic again, going back to the literary comparison, pathetic fallacy. That is his soul. That's Michael's soul that we are watching being rendered in the landscape. But it doesn't do it in a cheesy way. It doesn't do it in a melodramatic way. Just very Gordon Willis's cinematography just calmly observes little physical details like that. That's an amazing scene. I do think the bit it is in one of the flashbacks where I think young Vito has relocated to Sicily, and they're passing around the model of the Statue of Liberty, and they're just kind of like all glad handing it. It's like America is theirs for the taking, and this kind of is a portent of what's going to happen with organised crime in New York and other areas. Lovely little details like that, just beautiful.
That Fredo bit. I've always wondered. Does Fredo know that that's it for him, or do you think? I've never quite decided where I landed on that, because he's meant to go fishing with his nephew, and they're like, "Oh, the nephew's not coming." And at that point, does he realise I'm fucked here?
Yeah.
Or is he so little bit simple that he's just going fishing?
I mean, I think that bit earlier on when Michael basically seals his fate and kissed him and says, I know it was you, Fredo. I mean, I'm sure Fredo must have known that the game was up at that point. I mean, that's another one of the great scenes. Everyone cites that moment when they're in the middle of the dance floor, and it cuts through all the noise with that sense of betrayal. And again, it's all to do with Al Pacino and John Cazale being absolutely top of their game. Terrifying. It's like, what is this going to be like? These are two brothers. What's this going to lead to? And then you find out at the end. Just, terrifying.
I've got one final question. Before you watched it in your late teens, had The Simpsons already ruined it for you?
It's actually, no, they had ruined Cape Fear. No, I remember that as Sideshow Bob stepping on the race. So, yeah, I remember coming to Cape Fear retrospectively thinking, oh, okay, this is not quite as scary as, it's scary, but not as scary as, I know why, it's because The Simpsons.
Simpsons did it.
Yeah.
They always did.
Great days start with great underwear. So if you're looking for something special, give Tommy John and gift a better day. Everything we make is meticulously crafted from breathable stretch fabric for the perfect fit, including our sleepwear for him and her. It feels good to give, but it feels great to give Tommy John. Find something for everyone and pick up something for yourself, because at Tommy John, greatness is in our very fabric. Don't miss Tommy John's Cyber Monday sale. Save 40% site-wide at TommyJohn.com/Spotify. See site for details.
The holidays are back at Starbucks, and there's so much to share. With classics like Caramel Brulee Latte, Peppermint Mocha, and Chestnut Praline Latte, we're celebrating everyone's flavor of festivity. Order yours in the app.
streaming December 12th on Peacock. Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie are back.
That's hot. Loves it.
For a show-stopping reunion that will prove putting on an opera is anything but simple.
We're really good at this.
One thing's for sure, they won't be upstaged.
Good to have you back. Come on, we've got a show to do.
Paris and Nicole, The Encore, a 3-part reunion special, streaming December 12th, only on Peacock.
Got another little question before the worst sequel. So this is a very separate question. So this is, what was your most disappointing sequel? So it doesn't have to be a bad sequel, but it's one when you went in high and you came out low.
Ooh. That is interesting. Yeah. So something like middling.
Something middling, something you're like, I can't wait to see.
So it might not have been a bad movie necessarily, but you kind of went in high and, you know, you came out.
For example, Jurassic Park 2, if you're that age.
That's interesting because I remember seeing The Lost World in the cinema when it came out, and obviously I was 10 at that point, and I didn't pay any attention to the storytelling flaws. I was just like, absolutely blew my mind, just like the first one did. I was like, wow, this is incredible. And obviously the visual effects were more sophisticated in The Lost World, so it's absolutely catnip for a 10-year-old. And then obviously only later on you realise the story doesn't really add up all that well.
I love this because through this podcast we find out where you find out films can be shit. And at 10 you're still in that lovely bubble where everything is rainbows and daisies.
Yeah, I kind of wish I could go back there, to be honest. It was a lot easier.
Me too.
I think 9-10 is about the right time though, but what we're finding the average of realising that films are shit is 9 to about 13, I think, from people who've had on this podcast. So I think you're about the right time.
Pre-cynicism, pre-adolescent cynicism, I think.
A Phantom Menace did a lot of damage to a lot of people.
Actually, you've said it. You've said it actually, because again, seeing that in the cinema, even at the age of 12, when I couldn't really articulate that, even at that age, I was like, "Is that it? Is that it? Like, did I really wait that long? Having only really started to grapple with Star Wars about 5 or 6 years before that, and being really, really primed, because I remember the 1997 VHS reissues of the original trilogy, 4, 5, and 6, really set me up. That was 2 years before the Phantom Menace came out, I think. Yeah, and I was like, great, brilliant, all the marketing hype, and even I thought as a 12-year-old about the Phantom Menace, I thought it didn't really make me feel anything. And I remember the key thing, I was like, why was Darth Maul only in it for 10 minutes? That's the main thing I remember thinking. Yeah,
I don't know. Star Wars is weird because it's like your first crush. You fall hard and you fall quick. And that's how I feel like when you first find out that Star Wars is a thing and it's brilliant, and then you watch Phantom Menace and I watch Phantom Menace, and you come out at the end and you're like, oh, life will never be the same.
Yeah, it's all misery and resentment and despair after that first cry. It's so, I just, it's funny, and even at that, in that pre-adolescent age, one can get snookered by all the hype and all the attendant publicity for it. And that's not inherently a bad thing. That's how movies do their thing. But I mean, for the Phantom Menace, it was particularly big. It was like the first Star Wars movie we'd had for 16 years. And in that intervening gap, I'd been born, and I learned to grow up with Star Wars. And in that same period, I learned to love James Bond and Indiana Jones and Ghostbusters and things. And even I thought, nothing really happened in the Phantom Menace. Nothing happened in it. Even I was a little bit deflated by it. And then I think as a 12-year-old, well, the only reason why I was moderate in my criticism was because I probably would have been told off for swearing, and I probably didn't. The only reason why I didn't do that.
So we've had a history now. You brought up Indiana Jones a couple of times. So we're going to move on a little bit older. How do you feel about talking about disappointing? The recent, well, I say one recent, one's like 15 years old now, and the other one's pretty new, but Kingdom's Crystal Skull, was that a disappointment for you?
Yeah.
Sure, just say, look on your face, like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's completely...
That's my obfuscating face. Try not to give away my answer. The thing is with Crystal Skull, again, not unlike the Phantom Menace, I remember being slightly snookered by all the hype and thinking, okay, this is going to be the first Indiana Jones film I've seen on the big screen. Indiana Jones, bring it on. And I think that blindsided me at the time when it came out to the not inconsiderable flaws that are in it, bearing in mind that came out pretty much in the same window as Iron Man. Iron Man didn't have any expectations on it whatsoever, whereas Indiana Jones did, because it's Indiana Jones. And it's funny, you look back at that now and you think, wow, not only did Iron Man take off an entire new comic book franchise, but blimey, did Steven Spielberg drop the ball badly with that one. It's just not good.
I do have to ask, this is a bit tangent, but you write about films and review them and stuff. What has been the most disappointing that you've gone into like a screening and you've come out like, I can't wait to see, and then you've had to write about it? I can't imagine doing that. Yeah. And how polite do you have to be about it?
Well, the thing is, for because I write for Cineworld, and I don't really do reviews for Cineworld because we have to stay objective for the website.
Fuck.
But yeah, I know. Yeah, it's actually a bit of an advantage. But even so, even writing creative non-review features for a film you don't like, that's a big ask. I'll be honest about that. Not as big an ask as doing a review would be, but it is still a big ask, and you can just feel the prospect of that just wasn't very good. And I've already said to somebody, I'll probably do a feature about this. I'll probably write about the soundtrack or the acting. And then you watch the film and you think, it's really not going to justify the effort, but I'm going to have to do it anyway. I thought that recently. I mean, it's a bit of a pile on at the moment with this film, but I thought that about Joker Folie à Deux. I thought, bloody hell, it's just, this is really, it's not good enough to warrant the effort. No. But you kind of have to do it.
That's a little
How
bit
mad
like,
is that?
We've had a few stories of people that worked on like Empire magazine, and you're getting the cover story. The movie's picked that's on the cover before anyone's seen it, and then you watch it and you're like, oh god.
I can't remember. Did Empire get Crystal Skull? And this is a while ago now. I can't even remember if they got that. That would have been embarrassing.
They probably did. The one we have a story about is Ian Nathan and Speed 2.
Yes. Yeah. Speed 2 was on the cover, So they couldn't, I think it was like they couldn't give it less than 3 because it was on the cover.
There's a certain like unwritten rule that if they're on the cover, then I'm not quite sure you can give films, or you couldn't back in the day, like 1 stars or below.
You guys will remember this because we're all singing from the same hymn sheet here. Do you remember? I can't remember who it was, but Empire gave a 5-star review to Attack the Clones. Do you remember that?
It's Chris Hewitt.
Never lived that. Yeah, that's it.
We've had him on the podcast. We've talked to him about it.
Chris is great, but I don't think he's ever lived that down completely.
But he's not the only reviewer to do it. Like they gave like Superman Returns like 5 stars as well, and there's some absolutely mad things in that category. But saying that's what's so good about film. Like one of us would love a film that someone else's worst film, and someone's worst film is someone's best ever film.
Happens on this podcast all the time. Someone's best sequel is someone else's worst.
No, I
not
to
not
give
yours,
defense
but,
to Chris. The first time I came out of Attack of the Clones, I was very up on it as well. I was like, fuck, Samuel Jackson in a Star Wars film, Mace Windu, he's badass. And then I watched it a few more times. I was like, there's some problems here, isn't there?
Well, that's, I can't speak out against Chris or anyone else who gave Attack the Clones 5 stars, because I thought Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was pretty good when I first watched it, and I was like, I really misjudged that, because that is not good. It is like 2 60-year-old directors trying to tap into their 20, 30-year-old selves and badly ballsing it up. Like, really, the aesthetic of it is wrong. It's lit wrong. It doesn't look right. The CGI is terrible, right? Replacing all the practical sets they had in the first ones. The acting is misjudged. Credits John Williams, because I'm a soundtrack journalist. I'll always point out John Williams for valiantly pulling us through as best he can.
He is the best.
He is, yeah. I mean, actually, because funnily enough, at the end of Dial of Destiny, the follow-up one, which wasn't that much better than Crystal Skull. I mean, maybe slightly better. It still wasn't great. But
I'd say it was a lot better personally, but you know,
it didn't upset me the way that Crystal Skull did. I mean, it might have just been because
that's a nice way of saying it. Yeah.
But at the end, in the end credits of Dial of Destiny, when you do think, oh God, is this the last time we are going to see him on the big screen? And when the credits came up with the Raiders March from John Williams, everyone started humming it. Everyone started singing along to it in the preview screening. Like, I don't really care about the film. Those are the memories that I like. It shows how engaged people are with the legacy of the franchise and John Williams specifically, and how much he's imprinted on it. So that, to me, redeems any kind of flaws I might have had about the film in question.
I love that. Okay, cool. Well, we're now in a good place for the next question. Sean, what is your worst ever sequel?
Yeah, I had to think about this, and then after thinking about it, it popped into my head quite quickly. I'm going to say Zoolander 2. Just a movie that was blown out of the water by its own teaser trailer that came out 6 months before the movie. Teaser trailer was hilarious. I don't know if do you guys remember?
I don't really remember it. What happened in it?
It basically it was either an imitation of Stephen Hawking, or it was Stephen Hawking. I think it was Stephen Hawking himself, basically taking us on a cosmic phantasmagoric journey through the universe and through time itself, and gradually you see symbols alluding to the first Zoolander turning up, and you think, oh, okay, right, I kind of get what this is, and then you come out and you realise you're in Derek Zoolander's brain, and it comes out and you see Ben Stiller, and you think, oh, okay, right, now I know where we are. This is all in like a minute and a half, and the title comes up like several times, but Derek Zoolander tries to say it phonetically, so he's like, 200 Lander? He's like, no, it is being done in Roman numerals, but I don't spell my name with a 2. And he's doing all like the Blue Steel stuff and everything. And I think it culminates with Stephen Hawking going, oh, geez, you are so freaking dumb. Like that. So, but that was, I was like, great, I'm in. Zoolander, cult classic. And then I watched the film.
Yeah. I think, what we said earlier about some people's best sequels are also some people's worst. I think there's any shout of your best being the worst and your worst being the best. There's no world that's happening. Zoolander 2 is the absolute stinker.
Yeah. How did you see it? Was it cinema job?
Yeah. It was. I didn't go to a preview screening of it whenever it was, like beginning of 2016, I think it was. It came out, and I just remember thinking, goodness me, where's the spirit? Where's the comic? Where's the timing? Like, what was it even made by the same guys that made the first one? It was, but you'd be fooled into thinking it wasn't. It's so heavy on its feet. And the first one, you think of like David Bowie on the catwalk and turning out, it's like, whoa, Jesus, it's like David Bowie. And it just somehow makes comic sense within the register of the first one. Like all the weird cameos like David Duchovny and all the random people turning up. And in what was so quick-witted and off the wall in the first one is kind of maneuvered into place so clumsy. It's like, right, so the first film had a bunch of celebrity cameos. Look, here's a big celebrity cameo making its way towards you from about 10 miles away, and then they kind of dump it in front of you, and it's like, not only have I seen that coming in a way that I didn't see it coming in the first one, but the cameo itself just isn't funny. It's just nothing happens with it.
There's some really weird ones. The Katy Perry one is just really weird.
Benedict Cumberbatch, I mean, I know he apologised for that retrospectively. So,
I watched that again today and I was like, I had to check the years. It was like 2016. This stuff was happening. In my head, it feels very much like a Blues Brothers 2000. When you said like the same people made it, but it doesn't feel like it kind of thing.
I forgot about Blues Brothers 2000. That's a really good comparison, actually.
Don't worry, we've had to watch that as well. I'm guessing you were a fan of the first one in 2001, was it?
Yes, I believe so. Something? Was it one of the films that was it? It was delayed by 9/11. It was kind of released, I think, in the period around 9/11. I think the cinema schedules obviously went into a bit of turmoil, I think, didn't they, around that period, from what I remember.
It sounds familiar.
It was 2001, wasn't it? I'm sure it was,
It feels like a 2001 film. And I remember instantly everyone pretty much watched it and thought, that's brilliant, hilarious, can we have more? So, and I can't understand why there was like a 15-year gap between them. And And when it was made, holy shit, it's a mess.
Yeah, it's emblematic of a movie where, because such a big gap had passed, 2001 to 2016, 15 years of people clamoring for a Zoolander sequel. I think that didn't help. It basically meant that the whole hype machine, the expectations just kind of metastasized and got out of control. And I think the filmmaker, like Ben Stiller and the rest of the filmmakers, were acutely aware of this. And the more filmmakers feel the need to live up to that kind of hype, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is comparable with this, actually. The more they feel the need to live up to this snowballing avalanche of hype, often the worse the film is, because it's so laboured. It's labouring to give the fans what they want. But the first one is so natural.
There's a great subject on Film to Film, just films that should under labouring. Okay, keep going.
yeah, that's it, actually, yeah. But if you're making a long-delayed sequel just purely to tick the boxes of what the fans want, chances are it's not going to be, because the first film was just a breath of fresh air, and it was almost, I mean, it's not comparable to Airplane, but it had that kind of Airplane spirit of like anything goes, and jokes seemingly came out of the ether in the first one, and they felt they were really light and funny, and just in this one, every joke is so mechanical, and it's just like a complete inverse of what made the first film so good, and I'm just baffled by how that happened.
Yeah. I can't work it out, and I've watched this a few times now, and the script is awful. I mean, it's got a good cast, and it's weirdly got Christina Wig in it, and she doesn't do anything. Will Ferrell doesn't turn up for an hour, and then by that point, it's far too late to be saved by him. And the weird Hansel's orgy things feels not right. Even Derek Zoolander doesn't feel funny anymore, and I don't know if that's just time, the age we live in now, or if it's just he's playing it wrong. I don't know.
It's weird, isn't it? It's all too much. There's so many like bad, cheap celebrity cameos in it. Like, it's almost like it's got, how many of our friends can we get in this? And Ben Stiller's gone, I've got my mum and dad in it, so, I'm happy.
And the reason why all these people are in it, because 15 years has elapsed between the first one becoming a cult hit and this sequel, which means they're all lining up. They've all been lining up over the last 15 years to be in it. Let's give them all a role. It's like, no. You need to actually write a decent film. You need to tailor the script. You need to kill your darlings, edit it, cut it down, take cameos out, move things around. And it's just bloated and ill-disciplined, and it's just overproduced. I think that's the thing. Comedies are rarely good when they're overproduced. Comedies are good when they're kind of low budget, simple jokes. Timing is they would say it's obviously comedy is all in the timing. I just think that the best comedies are the simplest, not unlike the first Zoolander. And great comedies, you shouldn't be seeing the strain of where the jokes are going to come. The jokes should just turn up. And like you said, Rich, with the celebrity cameos, like you can see the celebrity cameos coming, which means that it's not a joke anymore. It's just it's a smug kind of in joke. It's not a joke, it's an in joke. It's like an in joke collective kind of thing, and that's not what the first Zoolander was, despite the fact that it did have loads of famous people in it.
It was a funny look on fashion as well, and it was like taking the piss out of stuff. And this one, all the fashion people are now in on the joke. Like you had all those fashion people, and you're like, well, it's not funny anymore if they're not.
And also, this one felt meaner, like mean-spirited, whereas the last movie didn't. It didn't ever feel like you were really taking the piss out of people that couldn't defend themselves. Whereas this one really does feel like that. Like it's just it's a lot meaner.
The first one just hit on this beautifully simple conceit, which is that fashion parades are quite daft, aren't they? But they, like you said, it wasn't mean-spirited. It's like they're daft, but there's a reason why people watch them, because they are inherently fascinating in a garish, strange kind of way. Whereas the sequel doesn't have that satirical underpinning. It kind of fires off in about 10 different directions, and it's just trying. A great comedy should be anchored to one central conceit. You think Airplane. There's a stricken airliner. The captains have gone down. There's the blow-up doll Otto is flying it until Ted Stryker takes over. It's a simple idea, and they just milk it for all it's worth, and that's how. And then in this, it's like we've got about 6 different subplots all flying around. It's like, that's not the way that great comedy is supposed to work. Like, it's
Kiefer Sutherland being pregnant isn't funny.
I'd forgotten about that. Yeah. What does that even mean? Like, it just... Like, what?
I don't know. And Sting's cameo is odd. And there's a part, I watched it today, and he does it at one point, and near the end, he does the blue still. And it doesn't look like he's pulling a pout. He looks like he's having a turd, to be honest.
Maybe he was. Maybe he realised what film he was in.
Yeah. Do you think it was just done too late? So if it came out 2005, 2006, it would have been all right?
Yeah, maybe. I think it would have been slightly less smug than perhaps it ended up being. I suppose one has to consider Ben Stiller was a big star in 2001 when Zoolander came out, but he became a bigger star in the intervening years. And one would have to think, is that necessarily a bonus for a comedy film that should be relying on a relatively simple setup? Is it helpful when the main actor has got more A-list baggage and they're bringing it into a film that's relying on ostensibly simple jokes? I don't know whether that is necessarily a good thing. I think the first Zoolander, Ben Stiller was just famous enough to sell it, but he wasn't so famous that he kind of disappeared up his own backside with all of his celebrity powers, which is exactly what happened in the sequel. It's a very strange one to try and pin down. I mean, comedies, I've said this on Frames to Frame, the podcast I do with Andy Williams. We talked a lot about comedy. You know, comedy is the most subjective thing, and people get really angry about comedy. If someone likes a comedy and you don't like it, it's really personal, because you are basically trashing something else that somebody said, well, that made me feel good. Why don't you like it? You know, why are you stamping on that? Because it just wasn't funny. And comedy is really weird. I think comedy is the most subjective of all the genres. I don't think there's anything subjective about this film. It's just crap.
Yeah.
But just, not good.
It feels in the very same vein. I know I mentioned Blues Brothers earlier, but also more recently is the Coming to America. And I think it has the same problems. Do you think there's a place now for a Zoolander 3?
Oh, bloody hope not. I really hope not. I just think, I think this one was a bomb. This one was a critical and commercial bomb. The audiences stayed away from it as well. So I think they got the point with this one. It's like, well, hopefully they did. It's like, right, let's not do this again. Let's not trash the memory of the first one. Even bearing in mind, the first one wasn't a hit. It wasn't a commercial hit. It became like a cult thing afterwards. And I think
the power
that's
of a DVD.
Yeah. And I think they mistook that in the sequel. They thought they could create an immediate hit. And the first one was never an immediate hit. The first one gained its reputation slowly. That's how cult movies work. You can't make a cult movie overnight. That's not how... And it just baffles me that they miscalculated that. You know, they were the guys that made the first film. They should have been paying attention to, the slow burn popularity, the metrics, like how it worked. And it's like they were substituted by aliens from another planet. It was just very... Very, very
it feels like no one read the scripts to check that it was funny. And
I think...
And it feels very Ben Stiller-like now with what he's making now with Severance, and even The Life of Walter Mitty feels like more of a film.
I wonder how much Ben Stiller had to do with the scripts. I think that the rule I get from Zoolander 2 is don't let Justin Theroux write your scripts. Yeah. What's he done? Iron Man 2, Rock of Ages, Zoolander 2. No, you're all right, thanks.
Did he do, I mean, in his slight defence, did he not contribute to Tropic Thunder?
He did do Tropic Thunder, yeah.
But he also wrote Your Highness, which is...
Yeah, that brings him down again, yeah.
Diabolical.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a scene that you particularly hate?
Not really. It all blurs. It all blurs into this sort of like blancmange of just like blandness, and it's just nothing really stands out being particularly good. Nothing stands out being particularly terrible. It's just all pretty terrible, consistently terrible. You can clearly tell they've stuffed more money into it, but Zoolander wasn't charming because it had a lot of money behind it, despite all the celebrity cameos. It's like Zoolander wasn't about, because this one kind of goes really weird with like big explosive set pieces, and the first one was never about that. And I remember being baffled by this. So it's like, why have you tried to turn it into an action movie? Like, it's not but then a lot of these comedy sequels do seem to idiotically do that just to up the ante.
Yeah.
It's strange.
I've just remembered my because you've recently celebrated your 200th episode on Frame to Frame and you rewatched The Room. My friend Dan, he got a ticket for the premiere of Zoolander 2, but on the same night he had a ticket for The Room, and he left Zoolander 2 because he wasn't enjoying it as much to go to The Room.
Yes.
That's how
Good
bad
man.
this film is.
he took refuge in The Room. I think you can't say anything more damning about Zoolander 2 than that. It's just, that's fantastic. Was that at the Prince Charles, just out of interest? Did he go and watch that?
So he went, it was the premiere because he had to, there's a video of him escorting Natalie Dormer, used to work in a company that did the premieres, basically. You get a ticket when you help out. And he's like, I'm going to go see The Room. So then, the next day I was like, so how's Zoolander 2? He was like, I can tell you what the first 20 minutes is like.
I'm with your friend. The Room offers much more entertainment value, albeit for completely the wrong reasons. Yeah, The Room, well, if you see The Room with a group of people, it's one of the best things. It's one of the best things you'll ever do. Zoolander 2, no. Yeah, spoon. It is, Zoolander 2 is terrible. The Room is an accidental work of genius that's done. It's gained its reputation over time. Zoolander 2 has been completely forgotten. Well, until I brought it up today, but
we'll put it back to bed now.
This episode is brought to you by Skinny Pop Popcorn. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Oh, so light and crunchy. Skinny Pop Original Popcorn is the snack you've been searching for. Made with just 3 simple ingredients: popcorn kernels, sunflower oil, and salt. Snacking never felt or tasted so good. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Give yourself permission to snack and pick up Skinny Pop Original Popcorn today.
This year, Santa's bringing the power of Energizer into his workshop.
Whoa, the Energizer Bunny's got so much power.
Wait, he's powered up all the toys. I think that means we're done for the year.
I love this bunny.
He's the hardest working helper the North Pole has ever seen. And he wants all your gifts to have the power of the #1 longest lasting AA battery. So this holiday season, stock up on Santa's and the elves' favorite battery, Energizer Ultimate Lithium.
This episode is brought to you by Peloton. If you're looking for flexible workouts, Peloton's got you covered. Summer runs or playoff season meditations. Whatever your vibe, Peloton has thousands of classes built to push you and has something there to adapt with you whether you need a challenge or rest. Peloton has everything you need whenever you need it. Find your push. Find your power. Peloton. Visit onepeloton.com.
I've got another little question before we do Dream Sequel. So it is, what sequel seemed like a bad idea, but you ended up liking? So it's very much reverse of what we've been talking about the last few things.
Ooh, I wouldn't necessarily... I mean, it's a terrific film. I wouldn't necessarily rank it in my all-time favourite films, but 10 Cloverfield Lane really
Great
took me by surprise.
Yeah.
Great film, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Had no right to be that good. I was surprised when I saw it. Yeah, because those films are weird, those three. There is only 3 of them now, right?
Yeah, they did the Cloverfield Paradox, and then there was rumours that Overlord was going to be a Cloverfield movie, and then it wasn't. It was just a World War II zombie. Yeah, I think 3. I think they've only done 3.
How mad's that? Because the other Paradox was meant to be another film, and they turned that into a Cloverfield. So
and that was terrible. That was rubbish.
Yes, we've just talked about that. Yes, someone has talked about that. I'm just looking at the schedule. Yes, that one will be out by now. Yeah, we've watched that recently, The Paradox, and it's rubbish. But we both absolutely love that second one. And it's not really linked to the first one much, is it? Are the monsters the same at the end? Are we saying? Spoiler?
We only get a glancing look, don't we? We don't really see. We do see monsters at the end of 10 Cloverfield Lane, but it's not like it lingers on them. I mean, one could say that maybe it retcons the first one, and maybe it suggests there were like different monsters all alighting on New York within the events of the first one. That might be a bit of a stretch, but I think we're meant to assume that it's the same monsters.
Yeah,
the little things, little creepy crawly things.
Yeah,
but I suppose when you're talking about 10 Cloverfield Lane, that last 10-15 minutes, that's the controversial bit, isn't it? Because a lot of people, it does blindside you, it hoodwinks you into thinking, oh, this is 90 minutes of a survival thriller set in a bunker, and then all of a sudden we appear to have 15 minutes of a different movie bolted onto the end of it. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, because all the way through the movie, John Goodman's character has kidnapped Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and he's been telling her all the way through there has been some kind of an attack. So the omens are all there. It just so happens that the attack is, they did actually link it back to Cloverfield, to the found footage ones, the first one. So I didn't inherently have a problem with that. I did think the first 80, 90 minutes of it was the best bit. The bit when they are underground is fantastic, really tense, great acting, really stripped down lo-fi, character dynamics. John Goodman again plays a terrific psycho like he did in Barton Fink years before. Mary Elizabeth Winstead is really tenacious and really resourceful, and it's very easy to get on the side of her character because she's not easily daunted, and she always finds that these solutions about how to get out of this situation, and very tense. Yeah, I was very. Bear McCreary's score is fantastic.
Yeah,
very Bernard Herrmann-esque. I've interviewed Bear, and he's a great guy, and the use of the blaster beam on the soundtrack which was used in Jerry Goldsmith's score for Star Trek: The Motion Picture and others. I mean, I love all that heritage. I love the way Bear McCreary brings in that instrumental heritage into the score for 10 Cloverfield Lane. I think it's great.
Were you going into it then thinking this is going to be like Cloverfield, or because obviously I think we've seen trailers and they were quite secretive to Cloverfield trailers, if I remember right. But what were your thoughts going into it then?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because they almost do like a double bluff, don't they, with the title? They make you think, because it's called 10 Cloverfield Lane, it surely can't be a Cloverfield movie, because they wouldn't be that overt. So they try and do the reverse psychology, don't they, of making you think that because it's so obvious it can't possibly be that, or if it is, then maybe one wouldn't expect the ending to be as overtly linked to Cloverfield as it is. Like maybe one might have expected it to be a bit more, oblique in its connection. As it turns out, it's quite an explicit connection to Cloverfield at the very end when she gets out of the bunker and runs and finds out what's going on. It is more of an overt connection to the first film. I don't think. I mean, again, it's a classic J.J. Abrams bad robot thing. And I remember in the build up to it, they were doing everything they could to try and deflect the idea that it was a Cloverfield movie. They were kind of working hell for leather to kind of go, no, you need to we're not going to give away the secrets, but you need to go in and just experience it on its own terms. I mean, the minute you hear a studio or filmmakers like obfuscating like that, you think, well, clearly you've got something to hide here, haven't you? Otherwise, you just come out and say it. I didn't go in with that many expectations of it. I really like Cloverfield. The first Cloverfield I saw when I was at university, it was massive, and that was a game changer. Like the found footage, like monster movie being done on that scale, that was a big deal when it came out, and I was interested in this sequel. I can't say I was waiting for a sequel to Cloverfield. Not that I knew that's what this was going in. I just wanted a good thriller, and I got that. And at the end, I was like, "Oh, they did do it. they did do the thing they said they weren't going to do."
Do you think it'd annoy you more if it was a rubbish film and then they tried to tack on, like I suppose what they did in Paradox, right?
I mean, Paradox wasn't good for a host. I mean, Paradox, the acting wasn't good, the effects weren't good. Everything that was good about 10 Cloverfield Lane was kind of reversed in that one. But yeah, maybe. I mean, I think if it had been a rubbish film with just like 15 minutes of Cloverfield at the end, I think I would have still been annoyed. I would have still been like, well, you've still wasted my time.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what happened at the end of Joker Folie à Deux. I'm like, you've wasted 2 hours, 20 minutes of my time baiting me with an alleged Joker Harley Quinn movie, and you are deliberately not going to pay that off. I'm like, thanks, guys. Thanks for nothing. Just, yeah. I've ranted enough about it. I've done several rants about that lately.
I will put money on that coming up as a worst sequel multiple times.
Yeah, it'll be our new Jurassic World Dominion.
It will.
Oh, actually, yeah.
Which made a lot of people angry. What is your dream sequel?
So I said Master and Commander, because
you did.
How have we not got a Master and Commander sequel so far? with all the rubbish that Hollywood's pumped out since 2003, we haven't had that. Just not fair.
How did you come to it? Because not everyone's seen Master and Commander, I found out recently.
Did I see it in the cinema? I would have been the right age. I don't know if I did see it in the cinema. I think I caught up with it on DVD. I bought it on DVD, and it was again in the teenage phase. I was starting to get into the films of Peter Weir. I think I'd seen Picnic at Hanging Rock, so I remember my uncle really, really going on about that. He's like, if you want a good, weird, gripping film, watch Picnic at Hanging Rock. And I think I'd seen that. I'd seen Witness. I'm pretty sure I'd seen Witness by that point as well. So I knew who Peter Weir was. Obviously, I knew who Russell, don't criticise my accent, Crowe was. And Paul Bettany is.
You hadn't read the books then?
No, I wasn't familiar. I still haven't read the books. Patrick O'Brien, is it? There's a lot of them, aren't there? There's quite a few of them. Did this adapt the first book? I can't remember what. I think they might have.
Apparently, this is apparently maybe the part of the first 3 books or something.
Yeah,
it's something like that. And then, but there's 21 books in total.
Blimey. How have we not had? There's 21 books. There's more books in this series than there are in Harry Potter. And how have we not had a sequel to this? And I just went into it for the first time watching on DVD thinking, okay, it's going to be a, seafaring action movie with Russell Crowe, gladiator on the high seas. It's probably not going to be much more than that. And really, there are only 2 action sequences in it, at the beginning and at the end. Like the fantastically well done, like really visceral, but it's a Peter Weir cerebral atmospheric character study that just happens to be bookended by 2 great big like cannon roaring action scenes that are as good as anything I've seen in any nautical film. But the 90% of the movie is about the relationship between Russell Crowe and Paul Bettany, and I love that. I love. And they're fantastic. I think Russell Crowe, maybe his choices recently haven't been great, but Russell Crowe can be a great actor. And I think, his accent is consistent in this and his character persona is consistent. He's really good as the captain who is so hell-bent on following the French vessel that he might be leading his own men into danger. You genuinely believe that Russell Crowe has got the persona and the bearing and the heft to play a character like that. And maybe Paul Bettany steals it from under his nose as the botanist and the physician, because that's the quieter performance. It's the more introverted performance. But it's when they're together, like debating the ethics of their mission and the safety of their mission. Those are the bits where disagreeing about whether to go to the Galapagos or not, and do we continue following this French vessel into unknown waters? Do we turn back and head home? Do we sort of prioritize the natural environment like research? Those are the bits where it really shines, and I think that's where you can tell that Peter Weir is just a fabulous director of actors and characters, where it comes out of like Witness and Mosquito Coast and Truman Show and things like that. I love the way he locates that within this story. Like he makes the story his own unique. Well, it's like, why haven't we had another one? Seriously.
I think the problem is that they went up against Return of the King. They released at the same time. And everyone now is like, oh, have you ever seen Master Commander? It's like, yes, you're all 20 years too late, everyone.
It didn't really make the money, did it? It didn't. It had it was quite a big budget. It was 150 million budget, and I think it made about 200 million.
But that's the thing, isn't it? Because maybe more so in the years since this film's come out, you routinely hear of films that don't do very well financially, and yet they get sequels. I read about it all the time. It's like, how did that get greenlit? I thought that tanked like $50 to $100 million at the studio. I know we're making.
I think by all accounts, it was pretty harrowing to make for everyone.
Yeah, I don't
think anyone wanted to come back to make another one.
Yeah, when you look at it, and I can certainly believe that.
It looks like it though, doesn't it? It's all on there. It's all on screen. It's an amazing thing. Apparently the boat, you can go visit the boat. It's in America somewhere, which would be an amazing trip. But it looks so fucking good for a film that was done in like 2003 or whatever it was. Man, it plays. Like we watched it recently. Someone picked it for last season as well, and I was like, "This is going to make my dad very happy," because it's the one that he keeps going on about. Has anyone picked Master and Commander yet? And then he'll give you a whole history about where they could have gone. Because even at the end of this film, it teases a sequel. Sean,
it does, yeah.
It teases the French captain is still alive and is possibly going to try and overtake the second boat.
A mutiny, and then it's like, oh no, we can't go back to the Galapagos. We've got to was it subject to the requirements of the service? And it's like, and then Paul Bettany and Russell Crowe reach an accord, knowing that there are kind of greater things at work here. You know, there's the greater good. Yeah, it does leave it wide open. And it's just so. I mean, I'd heard, and I think Peter Weir has subsequently debunked this, that the reason why Peter Weir didn't come in. Peter Weir is, I think, unofficially retired from filmmaking altogether now. I think, hasn't he? I heard that the reason why Peter Weir didn't want to make another one of these was, according to Ethan Hawke, with whom he worked on Dead Poets Society, is that Peter Weir was absolutely driven into the ground by the demands of working with both Johnny Depp and Russell Crowe on separate projects.
Right.
That's what Ethan Hawke said. And then I think Peter Weir then came out and said, I don't know where Ethan Hawke got that. It's absolutely not true. So, I mean, the Johnny Depp film I don't think was made, but obviously Russell Crowe was in Master and Commander. But yeah, I mean, being at the helm of a film of this size, I mean, if you get one off the ground into the cinemas, I'm like, yeah, I mean, bearing, I don't know how old Peter Weir was when he made this, but would you really have the energy to do another one?
Well, George Miller.
Yeah. What did they? Yeah, they could have got George Miller could have come in. I
would have loved to see a sequel at some point, and I'm surprised they haven't attempted in the 20 odd years to do a second, or even now a reboot. Yeah. You know, with technology and everything. And if that does happen, it will always be sad that it is not. Well, I suppose they could just do it like James Bond now, kind of thing. They just
change the actors out.
Yeah, and it would be fine, because you need good, like, piratey, boaty movies, don't you? It's something that's kind of missing.
We do sort of need that instead of the same old superhero fodder.
Yeah, it looks. You just don't get films like it anymore, really.
And how many since this has come out? How many pissing Pirates of the Caribbean movies have we had, and how many talks of reboots of that have we had? I mean, as far as I was aware, the last Pirates of the Caribbean movie tanked, but they still talk about that because obviously it's an IP, it's a Disney thing.
Yeah.
So it's probably got more lucrative potential, even though, as far as I remember, the most recent film didn't do very well at all. But that's just so. I mean, this Master and Commander was, I think, the same year as the first Pirates of the Caribbean, which I liked. I loved the first Pirates of the Caribbean. I thought it was really good fun. The ones after, not so much, but. Yeah, I just think that actually that was a good year for like nautical seafaring movies.
A good era, yeah.
But that frustrates me.
Do you think it didn't do well because of history being boring? Kind of like, what do you reckon? Like, maybe is it a harder sell for people to go and see at the cinema?
Yeah, maybe. I think you're right when you say box office competition would have done it. I mean, I think. This is a film that maybe asks more of its audience than on first viewing. When you look at the poster and you see Russell Crowe with the cutlass and in the regalia, you think, okay, this is just going to be a straight up action movie. And it's not that. And I think maybe word of mouth got around that, you know, this is a Peter Weir film. It's dialogue driven for the main. It's dialogue and atmosphere driven. There are a lot of like elliptical, surprising number of elliptical, ambiguous things in it. The character played by Lee, I forget his name.
Lee Ingleby.
Lee Ingleby, yeah, thanks, yeah, who believes himself to be a Jonah and throws himself off the boat because he's basically being bullied and harassed by. But and then when he does commit suicide, it starts raining. They've been becalmed, and then it starts raining again. These classic elliptical Peter Weir touches that go back to things like Picnic at Hanging Rock, like the way he smuggles all that in there. I mean, I don't know how much of that is taken from the books. But it feels very Peter Weir. It feels very connected to the natural world, and the natural world and the elements are kind of with you and against you at the same moment. And I love how it is a singular product of his imagination, this film. And yeah, I don't know. I think box office competition would have done in maybe the first part, and then the first Pirates of the Caribbean might have come out a few months before this, but maybe that just took the wind out of its sails a little bit, and people just weren't ready for like another big nautical movie. Although that didn't seem to stop comic book movies doing pretty well, given how many of those we've had.
If they did a legacy sequel now, because Lucky Captain Jack, whatever his name is, I think in one of the books there is older stories of him. Would you be excited about that, or do you think we've still missed the chance of having lots more adventures?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to be reunited with these characters either way, really. I mean, I'd be intrigued to know if you'd get the actors back again. Again, we've talked about, maybe one could swap out the actors and keep the story going. Again, if you use green screen or blue screen, one could maybe cut the cost down of the production somewhat with all those breakthroughs in technology now. I mean, one of the reasons why this film is so good is because it is so physical. It's CGI existed when this film came out, but it wasn't used as a crutch on this film. It was only used in certain scenes to embellish it. And when the ship, I hate going on boats, and when I see the ship rocking up and I was like, my God, those actors must have been brave to do that. I mean, they must have taken seasickness tablets, and I couldn't do that. As if I was an actor, I couldn't have done that. I'd be like, no, it's too scary. It's way too scary to film that. But yeah, I'd love to see more from this.
Is there a particular story you'd want to see? Have you got an idea for a sequel you'd like? Or
honestly, I don't know the books. I don't know the books that well. I don't know the books at all, actually. I defer to you guys. Have you guys read them? I'm not familiar.
Let's ring up my dad. He will tell me. I would just carry on where the last one started, or maybe the guy actually gets to go to Galapagos and actually study.
James Darcy's character off on his ship or something.
Oh, that could be a spin-off.
Yeah, that's true. You could have Billy Boyd played the helmsman, didn't he? Because this was one of Billy Boyd's first big post Lord of the Rings roles. He's not in this film very much, but he is in it. So yeah, there is so much potential with this, and there are so many little details, like the fact that Russell Crowe and Paul Bettany learned to play the violin and the cello respectively, despite that they actually learned how to do it. And I'm like, that's real commitment. I used to play the violin, and I never really progressed with it, and they kind of learned for this film. I'm just staggered at the level of physical commitment shown by the actors, and the attention to detail is remarkable. All the charts that they look at and the costumes that they wear, and just the details of the ship creaking and rolling backwards and forwards, and that battle at the end is just phenomenal. It's so visceral.
It looks so good, yeah. And the music and the sound, it's just just the cannon smoke, and just you can always feel like you can breathe it in, can't you? It's just God, I love cinema when it's like that.
Yeah. It's
Have you ever had the chance to go and see it on the big screen? Because once in a while they do for anniversaries or whatever.
Yeah, I haven't. I actually in Bristol.
I really want to.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it. It would be a really good one. I've not been aware of any anniversary screening in Bristol. I mean, they might have done one back in the day, but certainly not recently. I just think that this movie is kind of dangerously close to sailing into obscurity a little bit, and it's too good for that. It's way too good.
Yeah, that's a little bit sad. What's your favourite scene? It's trying to end on a positive. Is it the end?
Oh, the end is very, very good. I do like the bit when Jack and Stephen have their first little spat, and they've lost one of their crew overboard in the storm, and you get the first difference between them, and it's just there's been a big action sequence beforehand, and Peter Weir knows how to bring it down, just bring everything down and make everything more intimate again. And it's like, now you're talking like an Irishman. Well, I am an Irishman. And it's like, well, no, as a friend, as a friend, maybe we should have turned back weeks ago. And then there's that lovely, rich dialogue, that very ironic dialogue between the two of them. Really well acted by the both of them. I mean, I do think Russell Crowe is a good actor in the right material. I think Paul Bettany is probably quite underrated.
Massively.
Yeah, he's fab in this. He's maybe doesn't always do the best roles, but he's a good actor. That, I would say, is my favourite scene.
Those were Sean Wilson's Unequal Sequels. I very much enjoyed. It's not going to be in this one, is it? It's going to be in the extras. It's going to be in the
what's that? The chat about
sessions.
The composers and
yeah. I very much enjoyed the soundtrack chat.
I'm going to say it. That might be one of my favourites. I loved talking to Sean about movies. He's one of those people which is an absolutely delight to edit to, because he just goes and he talks so fluently and eloquently. That's not a word.
Eloquently. You were close.
Thank you. About films and the sequels he loves and stuff. And yes, the extra track is excellent, by the way. But what a lovely man. What a lovely chat. Great picks.
Yeah. Godfather Part 2. Only the second time it's ever come up on the podcast.
Mad, isn't it?
Widely considered to be the greatest sequel ever made. Literally picked twice in 7 seasons.
Mad. It is
Wild.
It is really good, though, isn't it?
It is really good.
It's
and it's
a really good
perfect
sequel.
contrast to his worst sequel, which is Zoolander 2, which is really, really shit.
Really shit. That's the second time that's come up on this podcast, and don't think it'll be the last, but it is quite offensive. It is a sequel to a cult brilliant film. I love Zoolander, the first one. It still makes me laugh.
I'm not a massive fan, personally.
Are you not? It still makes me laugh.
Zoolander's a bit too cringy. It doesn't quite get me.
As bad as that cringy is, the second one is worse. It misses what makes the first one so special on every mark.
The first one is a bit cringy with a few moments that I enjoy. The second one is all the cringe with none of the enjoyment. A lot of like, oh no, that's inappropriate.
The first one, you're kind of rooting for Zoolander, and the second one, you want to bury him in a hole and leave him there.
That is very true.
He feels more like a man out of time, and I know that's one of the premises of that second film, but it doesn't make it. It's bad. It's bad. But then we move on to Dream sequel, and I could talk about that film every time it comes up, which is Master and Commander.
Yeah, that's the second time that's come up as well. That's.
Got to watch it again, didn't I?
Yeah,
It was great.
yeah. I was going to say, I bet you watched it again, didn't you?
Of course I did. I love it.
It's in good company, Sean, with Phil DeSemlin. Picked it last season. Yeah, it's a very popular one to come up.
He is right. It's a film that doesn't get made much now, and I think it should do that kind of film because it looks hard work to make. To be honest,
it does look hard work to make. Yeah, it does. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure I'd want to do it.
No, because it looks cold and wet.
Yeah, true.
I can't imagine you. I know you're not always on a real boat. You're on a sound stage and just people throwing water at you, cold water.
It still doesn't sound fun. Like, yeah.
No. But you are starring opposite Russell Crowe, so
true.
That must have been fun. As that. But yeah, thank you to Sean for coming on the podcast and picking some absolutely cracking sequels and rubbish sequels, Sean. I will never forgive you for them. But if you don't know who Sean is, go check out Frame to Frame podcast. Him and a film fan, Andy Williams. They take 2 unconnected films and then find an obscure theme in them. Like the other day, one of the episodes was Falling Down and Joker. And then they talk about those films and they put them together kind of thing.
I can see where you'd go with those.
Yeah, I think we suggest a few in our episode, actually. Also, check out his writing for Cineworld and stuff. And he loves composers and movie soundtracks and stuff like that. He's now my go-to guy for that kind of thing because he knows everything and everyone, apparently. So that's very cool. Go check out our Another Slice chat with Sean. We really delve more into the composer music chat with him, and it's a great one. It's about half an hour long, so well worth the time. Rich, we've got anything else to say?
No, what I'd say is get yourself over to anotherslice.com/unequal sequel, where for just $2.99 a month, you can become a super special slicer. You can join us over there, and you'll get that extra half an hour of Sean telling us all about soundtracks, which, by the way, probably one of the best chats we've had ever.
It's a lovely
It's
chat.
amazing. It's brilliant. And you can't get it unless you're a super special slicer. So, go over there, pay your $2.99 a month, join us. It's half a coffee? It's bargain. Absolute bargain. If you do want to get in touch with us, tell us what you thought of Sean's picks. We will read out all your comments at the end of month roundup. You can find us on all the social medias, except that one. You know the one. We're not on that. We don't do it.
Well,
that
we
one
are.
that used to be a bird one, but we don't.
We're winding down. We're closing up shop, basically.
The one that's owned by a bell end.
Yeah, that one.
We're not a part of that. We're shutting it down. But you can find us on all the others. Just type Unequal Sequel into the search bar and you can get hold of us. We're on Instagram, we're on Threads, we're on TikTok, we're on Blue Sky, all those things. All the good stuff. We're there. You can find us. If you don't do social media, then you can get us on email. We are unequalsequel@hotmail.com. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know ideas for guests you'd like for season 8. Because season 7 is coming to a close. tell us who you want to see on season 8. And I mean, like, other than like Steven Spielberg and, you know, like crazy people, trust me, we're trying to get them. But, you know, give some ideas. People other podcasters you like, other film people you like, critics you read. Let us know. If you want to hear them on the podcast, let us know and we'll try and get them. If you really love us and you want to help us out, get onto your pod player of choice and write us out a review, especially if it's Apple Podcasts, but also Spotify and all those other ones. Tap us out a little review. Give us 5 stars because 1, it helps other people find the podcast, and 2, we're trying to become Rotten Tomatoes certified critics over here, people. And it really helps us to have all those positive reviews. So please go and do that. It really means a lot to us. It really helps us out. Please tell your friends to do it for us as well. We'd really love that. Just give us all the love you can. It'd be amazing. And yeah, that's it. That's all I've got.
If you're wondering what to get a couple of struggling independent film podcasters for Christmas,
there you go.
Please think about another slice. We celebrate every special slicer joining us. Basically, like we've given birth to a baby. It's a big deal for us.
We get very excited.
Yeah, we're like, oh my God, someone loves us.
Yeah, we do a little dance.
We've got 2 more talky interview episodes of this season to go. Get ready for them. They're very funny, very good, and Rich, be patient.
I can't. I'm so excited. This is the best Christmas present ever.
Episode 12 of season 7 is our big Christmas special. We're very excited. We can't announce what it is yet.
No.
But it's you know, it's going to be great. It's going to break the internet. I keep saying it. Get ready for it. I don't think people are quite ready for what's about to happen.
It could be the movie sequel podcast event of the century. Yeah.
Are we bigging it up too much? Probably. But it's going to be great and I can't wait to get it done. And then season 7's over. So 2 more weeks, Christmas special. Then we get to go away for the new year. And then we get to do all our New Year stuff. And that'd be fun. Okay, I'm done.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I think so. So it's a goodbye from me. Bye-bye. And it's goodbye from him.
Bye!
See you on the next one. Sequel this one. Have a great week. Bye-bye. You just can't wait, can you?
I really can't. I know I'm bigging it up a lot, and I hope people love it, and I hope it's amazing. But it's like I'm fulfilling a little childhood dream. It's not a childhood dream because obviously it's, you know, only been since I've been like in my 30s and 40s. But I am actually doing something I really want to do. So
he is, yes. He's like a giddy kid. It's quite. I'm gonna have to try and drag him, like calm him down when we do it. It's gonna be embarrassing, isn't it?
It's gonna be like when I let my son drink a can of Iron Brew before bed.
He loses his shit.